All right, we are now streaming live on Facebook. Thank you. Sorry about the delay. As usual with a Monday, things do sometimes pop up. I had a couple calls this morning, which caused a delay. And but one of the texts I got was from my son over in Japan. He was just texting to say, texting or on WhatsApp to say that things are good. And I hadn't heard from him in a while, and so I wanted to touch base with him. And we chatted a little bit this morning. And sometimes, even though you think sending a quick chat is a quick message, it would take just a minute, winds up putting you behind the whole morning. So that does happen once in a while in my life as well. So things do get kind of crazy. But today is Monday, March. What is today? Today's Monday, March 18th. Eve 18th. And goodness gracious, it seems like we were just starting March, like just a little. We have a guest today. We are able to be joined by Jamie Viebach, at a University of Illinois Extension horticulture educator, who will be talking to us about gardening with native plants. Now, I know that we've talked in the past. The Conservation Foundation is here locally with us, and they work with native plants and gardening, and you can get layouts from them. But Jamie is with the University of Illinois Extension, and the University of Illinois Extension horticulture educator. She is super passionate about native. While native plants have very long roots, they can break up all that clay and really contributed to how amazing the farm soil is here in Illinois. Now, I realize where we are at, they are scraping off that topsoil and building housing. But Illinois still has a lot of topsoil and a lot of farming south of I-80 and in Will County and in a lot of areas. So we are just welcoming her to talk about her passion. Beautiful, beneficial, maybe even touch on the monarch butterfly. So I'll pass it over to Jamie so that she can give us a little bit more information. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much, Representative. I'm very happy to be here on a Monday morning. And fun fact, I actually used to work for the Conservation Foundation, and that's kind of where I developed my love and appreciation for native plants. So I am going to share my screen here real quick. Just making sure you see the right screen there. It's not the notes part, it's the full screen.
Correct.
Oh, great. Okay, so yes, as she said, I'm Jamie Viebach. I'm a horticulture educator here in this part of Illinois. So I cover Kane, Kendall, and DuPage. So our office is, one of our offices is here in Naperville, which is where I am at right now. So let's move right along. I'm going to talk a little bit about why we want to use native plants, how to use native plants. I'm going to give some examples. And we'll talk about some cautions too. So first off, why do we want to use native plants? Well, they are easy maintenance. And we'll talk some more about the roots and why that is in a little bit. But compared to their more exotic ornamental counterparts, native plants are much, much easier maintenance. So if you are a lazy gardener like I am, or a busy gardener, native plants will take up much less of your time. They're also lower cost because of that. You don't have to spend your money on lots of inputs like fertilizers and herbicides and things like that into the soil. So they're much lower cost. They support a very wide variety of pollinators. So everything from the monarch butterflies to the endangered rusty patched bumblebee. When we plant for our pollinators, there's actually hundreds of species that we're helping out. And they're pretty. If you take a look at some of the examples that I have in here, butterfly weed just has that really striking orange color. Asters provide that late summer, early fall kind of color. And rattlesnake master, well, that's just a weird one that looks like something that belongs in Arizona, but is actually native right here in Illinois. So as she mentioned, the root system of these plants are really amazing. And even if you can't read what the different species are, this is just to really give you a sense of how deep those roots can grow. So if you see the silhouette of the person there under the tree, right at her feet, you can see the lawn grass. That grass, the roots on that grass is only about 2 to 3 inches long. That's why we have to spend all summer watering our grass, because those top 2 to 3 inches of soil dry out so quickly. In contrast, our native plants, those roots are going down sometimes 12, 15, 16 feet. They're getting moisture that's already deep in the soil, along with the nutrients they need and all of that just on their own. They don't need any additional water once they're established. So they really, this is part of why they can take care of themselves. And you can see just here kind of a side-by-side example of some non-native examples like spirea and daylilies compared to their native, you can call them counterparts, and just how much longer those roots go. And they support a wide variety of wildlife. So, you know, we mentioned the pollinators. We know the insects need the flowers, they need the leaves, but our birds also depend on those insects for food. Not only do some of them eat the seeds off the plants, like you can see here, I've got goldfinches all over my coneflowers in the fall, but many of the birds feed their babies with caterpillars. Those caterpillars are very nutrient dense little things, and they're just full of all of not just the vitamins and minerals and all those kind of things growing babies need, but also all of these chemical creating compounds that those birds need to have those bright feathers so that they can be reproductively successful later in life. And so birds really depend on the insects that attract these, or that are attracted by these plants. So they're really important, not just for the pollinators, but really the entire ecosystem. So let's talk a little bit about how to use native plants. So we can see here, this house has pretty traditional, shrubs that have been pruned to within an inch of their life. Pretty standard to see around just about any house. But instead, what if you replaced it with some native options, right? A lot more visually interesting. There's a lot more structure, texture, color to this kind of landscaping. And notice how very little grass there is. And it still looks visually attractive. You can also use native plants to create more natural looking gardens. You can see a couple of examples from my yard on the left and the right there. That Baptisia or indigo on the left, just the colors of it are really spectacular. And then on the swamp milkweed that's on the right there, excuse me, that swamp milkweed, you can see lots and lots of pollinators all over that one, along with the bright pops of pink that they provide throughout my garden. And while that center picture is not my yard, I kind of wish it was, you can see just how many different colors and things that are in there. And that is just going to be buzzing with pollinators, I'm sure, throughout the year. You can also use them to create functional gardens. So like a rain garden, as you can see there on the left, rain gardens are a great way to cover up a low spot in the yard that maybe holds on to water for a long time, doesn't drain very well, gets muddy. That's a great place then to put a bunch of native plants that looks both much more attractive than a mud pit, but also then now you don't have to mow it. And it really helps to take care of that water and channel that water down into the soil as opposed to out into our streams and rivers. Can also use them in shade gardens. I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, oh, I got this shady spot, nothing will grow. It's not that nothing will grow, it's just you're not trying the right stuff yet. So out in nature, if you go out into the woods, you never see just a plain old bare spot, right? There's always something that will grow there. So lots of native plants that are great options for shade gardens. And then, of course, for our pollinator gardens as well. I love this picture because it's sort of a tale of two cities here. On the left-hand side, you can see traditional turf grass. We've got a nice oak tree, so that's good, and a rock. And then on the right-hand side, you can see this must be sort of a hillside, so they created terraces to help keep the rainwater where it falls. And that rainwater then helps to nourish these native plants here, creating lots of color and life and preventing erosion. in very stark contrast to the grass that has already gone dormant. I'm going to guess this picture was probably taken in July. But you see all that dormant grass there versus just how alive it is on the right-hand side. These ponds are another issue that many homeowners associations have. They're put in order to help to capture stormwater and prevent them from blowing out our streams and our rivers. So they capture the rainwater, they allow the sediment to filter out of it before that water is slowly fed out into the streams. So they're a really great way to help manage stormwater. The problem is we always have this urge to mow right down to the shoreline. And when we do that, we end up with lots of erosion issues and also geese. Canada geese just love to be able to walk in and walk out of ponds. So anytime we have an issue like this is going to be just full of geese. And we know all of the issues that the geese bring along with them. Whereas if we were to naturalize the shoreline using all these kinds of plants, that not only prevents the erosion, but the geese are actually not going to like this very much. If they can't see 360 degrees as they're walking in and out, it makes them nervous. There could be coyotes hiding in there. There could be, things that want to hurt them, and that's going to make them nervous, and they're just going to go someplace else. So having these naturalized shorelines are a great way to deter the geese, as well as prevent this erosion. The erosion causes sedimentation in the pond, which causes lots of bigger issues down the line as well. So when you design your pollinator garden, I know this is, kind of my nerd side showing here, but creating a spreadsheet like this really can help you visualize your garden a little bit better. So it helps you come up with the colors and to see when you're going to have things blooming, because we want to have things blooming for as long as we possibly can. So when we put these in here like this, we can see that the different colors, when they're going to be happening, and what's going on there. I mentioned it's easy maintenance. It's not no maintenance. There's nothing that's no maintenance, but there are some things that may require some maintenance. So if you have things like milkweeds, if you put common milkweed in there, I don't recommend using common milkweed in a regular landscaping bed around your home. It's a great plant. They smell phenomenal, but they're really aggressive seeders. And so one of the ways that you can help prevent that is you can actually tie up the seed pods or put a little mesh bag around them so that the seeds can't fall out. It's also a great way to save the seeds if you're looking to save them to put them somewhere else in your yard. So you want to consider any kind of fruit or seed drop that your plants are going to have. If we're having a particularly severe drought, you may need to give your plants a little bit of a drink. For the most part, they can take care of themselves. But if it gets real bad and you see things get a little droopy, then maybe you want to give them a little drink. You want to make sure that you're pruning any woody plants properly. And here I'll plug our Master Gardener Help Desk. The extension has a help desk staffed by Master Gardeners who are here to answer your questions all year long. You can send us an email or call, or we have a form on the website that you can use to contact us with any questions you might have about pruning or planting or gardens or whatever questions horticulturally you might have. And that's free, and feel free to drop us a line anytime. And then you're going to want, the nice thing about this, as I said, it's good for lazy gardeners because you don't have to worry about doing so much cleanup in the fall. The more you can let stuff stand over the winter, the more those pollinators will have a chance to use those stalks as overwintering sites. The leftover seeds are good for the birds, things like that. So you'll really want to wait to clean up as long as you possibly can. There are certification programs out there if this is something you get into and you start putting these plants in your yard. The Conservation at Home program from the Conservation Foundation is a great one. Monarch Watch also has their Monarch Way Station program. You can register your yard as a way station. There's several others as well, but those just show your neighbors that what you're doing is intentional in your yard, that there's a reason behind this, that you are using your yard to be part of the ecosystem to help protect our pollinators. Let's look at some examples of great native species we have. Doug Tallamy who is an entomologist and author, has identified these 5 families as really the keystone to helping pollinators. These 5 families all they protect or they feed up to 75% of all insect species that we have here in Illinois. So if you're looking for somewhere to start that will have a big impact right away, these are good places to start. So the many different types of oaks that are native to here, black-eyed Susans or the Rudbeckia family, asters, goldenrod. Got to be careful which goldenrod you use. By the way, a lot of people think goldenrods are responsible for allergies. They're not. They just happen to bloom at the same time as ragweed. And ragweed does not have a very showy flower, so we don't really notice them, but they bloom at the same time, so everybody blames goldenrod. But the pollen on goldenrod is so big, it's not windblown. It can't blow around in the air. Ragweed, on the other hand, the pollen on there is teeny, teeny, tiny and blows easily on the wind, and that's what causes our allergy symptoms. So goldenrod, unfortunately, gets all the blame, even though it is completely innocent. And then the milkweed family. Everybody knows milkweed is for monarchs, but it is also for lots and lots of other species as well. As you can see on my little video here, there's at least 5 different species of insects that are using these flowers. So great place to start. I'd call them a good starter native are the purple coneflowers. They're easily recognized, very showy, grow very well, bloom July through September, only get to be about 4 feet tall if they're real happy. If they're not so happy, they'll be a little bit shorter. So this is really a great plant to have in your yard because it just really fits a variety of conditions and is really very pretty. Wild ginger is one of my favorites for shade. It's a great ground cover. It's got these big heart-shaped leaves. They come up early in the spring. It's a little bit early, but the next couple of weeks here, we'll probably start to see them coming up, and they form these nice mats along the ground, but they play really nicely with other plants too. So as you can see, there's some wild geranium coming up through them. They don't shade things out like some other ground covers do, but they fill in, they don't spread very much, and they just really make a nice ground cover for shady areas. Virginia bluebells, this is one of my favorites. Mine have just started coming up now, so they should be blooming in the next couple of weeks here. They're what we call a spring ephemeral. So they're one of these plants that take advantage of the fact that trees haven't leafed out yet, and there's a little bit of sunlight hitting that forest floor, and that's when they come out and put on their show. So if you go into any woodlands in the area, they will be popping out, and the flowers are a little bit fragrant. They almost smell like Fruit Loops. It's funny, everybody laughs when I say that, but I swear they do. But they will come up, they will bloom, and then they will absolutely disappear by June. So if you're planning on putting these in your yard, you want to make sure you have some succession going on. So something that's going to come up after those bluebells go away. Butterfly weed is another really great one. Not only is it in the milkweed family, so it's good for monarchs, but it's got this very striking orange color, and it doesn't really get very tall, only about 2 feet tall. So while it's blooming, really long bloom times, just really makes for a very striking addition to gardens and helps to attract monarchs. Blazing star or liatris. There's a bunch of different ones of these depending on what the conditions are in your yard. You can find a liatris that fits. And these are a butterfly magnet, right? The pollinators just absolutely adore these flowers. So when you have these blooming, they put up a tall spike on a tall stalk that's got some kind of feathery looking leaves on it, but blooms July through September. So it's one of those late summer bloomers, but it's very, very pretty. And like I said, just absolutely will be full of butterflies. We don't want to forget about our shrubs and trees either. Witch hazel is one of my favorites. This one actually just finished blooming. They bloom at really odd times. So there's 2 different species that you can get, one that blooms in the early winter and one that blooms in the late winter. So they like full or filtered sun and medium moisture. It's a shrub. It can get about 20 feet tall, but really, really interesting. One of those weird things that blooms at what seems to be the wrong time, but it works for them. Red twig dogwood is another nice one. It offers some winter interest. So those stems will stay red all winter long, and really striking against the snow provides some really nice structure for the birds. Likes full or partial shade, medium to wet soil. So again, if you've got a spot that maybe stays wet a little bit longer than you'd like it, this is a great place to put a dogwood. They can get up to about 10 feet tall, but you can prune them back as you need to. And they bloom June through September. They've got those little clusters of white flowers. So another great addition to a yard. And of course, there are oaks for any situation. If you got a wet area, a dry area, there are lots of different places that you can use oaks. And everybody thinks oaks are really slow growing. And while they're not the fastest growing tree, they will grow significantly, over the course of 10 or 15 years. So obviously, the longer they're left alone, the bigger they will get. But they've got beautiful fall color to them and really fit a variety of different conditions. All right, so let's talk about some cautions here. First off, one of the questions I get a lot is, where can I find these wonderful plants? Well, you'll want to look for a nursery that specializes in native plants. There are several online sources that can ship. Some smaller nurseries also will have native plants there, but you'll want to ask if the plants have been treated with any pesticides, because a lot of growers, because they think people want pristine looking plants, will spray the plants with pesticides. Well, then we're bringing in food only to have it be poison. So we want to make sure that we're not poisoning the food we're bringing in for our pollinators. So you want to make sure that they're not being treated with any kind of insecticide, because our goal is for these plants to be eaten at least a little bit. So you'll want to make sure you ask about that. You can also look for native plant sales. Spring is a great time to find native plant sales. The forest preserve districts, wild ones, many different places have native plant sales. If you go to the Illinois Native Plant Society's website, they have a list of native plant sales as well as nurseries that carry native plants on their website. So that's a great resource if you're looking for some place to get these. I would skip the big box stores. Typically, the plants that are at the big box stores have been treated. They may tell you they don't, and at that store they don't, but the grower that grows them probably does. So I generally advise people to skip the big box stores when you're looking for native plants. Now, cultivars is a big question that we get asked as well. And you might see the term nativars, that's short for native cultivar. And so the big question is always, well, are they as good as the straight species or wild type natives? And the answer is, it depends. They may or may not be. It depends on how they've been changed. So what a cultivar is a regular plant that has been altered somehow. So they've changed it so that the flower looks different. It's a different color. It's a different size. It blooms at a different time, something like that. And depending on how they've changed it, it may or may not be as beneficial to the pollinators. So I always describe insects and their relationship with plants sort of like a key and a lock. So if the flower is the lock, the insect's mouth parts are the key, and they've been specially adapted to fit into those plants so that they can extract the nectar and the pollen and what they need. If you change the lock too much, that key is no longer going to fit. So things like a double flower may prevent the insect from being able to take advantage of them at all. So how do you know if it's a cultivar? It's going to have some kind of a cutesy name after it. So you'll see, if you just see swamp milkweed, for example, or Asclepias incarnata, that's going to tell you that is the straight or the wild type of swamp milkweed. If, however, it says Asclepias incarnata and then in parentheses, ice ballet, that's going to tell you that's a cultivar. So that's the type that has been changed up. And just because it's native doesn't mean it should be in your yard. I've had people telling me, oh, well, it's native, so I have to leave it. No, you don't. It's your yard. You do what you want with your yard. And maybe that plant that's there is really aggressive and it's bullying out the other plants that you want to have there. Maybe it has an unattractive growth habit. I mentioned common milkweed. One of the reasons I don't recommend common milkweed usually for yards is because it can get 6 feet tall. And when it gets that tall and it doesn't have the other plants around it to support it, it flops over. And that can look a little bit weedy sometimes. So there's plenty of other great Asclepias or milkweed species that do look good in, say, a small suburban yard. And maybe you've got a big spot along a fence in the back or something that, you know, your design is such that it can handle common milkweed, and that's great, but not everybody does. So these are things that you have to take into consideration when you're planting is this going to be an aggressive cedar? Is it going to start popping up all over my yard? Or is it going to flop over and not look so great later on in the year? So there's ways to address that. Things like cutting them down early in the season can help them come back shorter. But if that's not something you want to deal with, maybe that's not a plant you want to have. So now we also have the issue of invasive species. So some of the things, the exotic plants that we have planted over the years have turned out to like it here so much, they're going to escape and start going other places. So these invasive species I'm going to show you are things that I have found that have traveled into forest preserves and wild spaces they're not supposed to be. So burning bush is a great example of that. This is one of the ones we've been finding more and more frequently. And it's a shame because it's got such great fall color on it, but we do actually have a native version called a wahoo. And it's got just as pretty foliage, right? Just as nice a compact habit. It's got these really cool berries on it. So definitely recommend planting wahoo over burning bush. Lesser periwinkle, otherwise known as vinca vine, vinca minor, also getting to be very invasive. Now, not all of these are on the state's invasive species list. There are some that we are working on getting on that list, but they, for various reasons, have not made it on that list yet, but they're all starting to turn up in forest preserves and causing problems. So just because it's not necessarily on that list doesn't mean it's not a problem. So highly recommend getting rid of vinca, and you can replace it with something like wild strawberry. This is a native plant. It does make strawberry fruits on there. If you can get to them before the critters do, the squirrels and the chipmunks really like them, but it's because they're so tasty. And of course, calorie pear. There's been a lot about this in the news lately because of just how crazy invasive this has gotten. So we really want to encourage people to remove these if they have them. You will start to see them. These are going to bloom really soon. You're going to start to see them along roadsides, in forest preserves, and any unmanaged open spaces. You're going to see them first because they have these bright white flowers on them, and then you're going to smell them. And unfortunately, they smell like dead fish. So they have weak wood. Do not recommend planting. We are really working on getting this on the invasive species list real soon, just because of how much of a problem it's causing. So instead, you could plant something nice like a redbud. Redbud has flowers, bright pink flowers in the early spring, and is another really good native option and replacement for those calorie pears. Some municipalities have started offering a bounty on calorie pears. So if you cut it down, show them proof that they'll help you towards the cost of a new tree or something like that. And I just wanted to throw a note in here about cicadas because this is a cicada year. This has been all over the news because of the dual emergence. So I have blown up the picture here a little bit so you can see here in DuPage County, we will not be seeing both species of cicadas that are coming out this year. If you wanted to see that dual emergence, you would have to go south to like a Coles County or Douglas, Champaign County, somewhere around there. We will not be seeing that 13-year cicada brood this far north. So despite what you've been hearing in the news, we are only getting the one brood of cicadas coming out this year. That's that brood 13. So if you've been here for previous 13-year or 17-year cicada broods, it's going to be just like that. Are they going to be a problem? A little bit. They're going to be noisy. If you have any newly planted trees, so anything you planted last year, or if you're planning on planting something this year, I would suggest maybe holding off until after the cicadas are done. If you can't, you might want to make sure you cover them. So the nymphs will come out when the soil temperature reaches about 64 degrees. That's not the air temperature, that's the soil temperature. And you can find out about that from the Morton Arboretum. They keep track of that. Or you can just take a meat thermometer and kind of stab it into the soil and see how that's going. So we're not quite there yet, but if the spring continues to be as warm as it is, we may get there soon. Usually happens between late May and early June is when they first come out, and then last for about 4 to 6 weeks. So while they are out, they are going to, their whole job when they're out is really to find a mate, lay eggs, and then die. That's all they're out here to do. They really don't eat a whole lot. So they're not locusts. They really don't, for a long time, we didn't think they ate anything. Now we found out they eat a little bit, but not anything significant. Where they cause the damage is the females will make a slit in the very tiny outer branches of trees to lay eggs in. And on newly planted trees or small trees, that can cause a problem because it can just cause a little bit of damage to them. And if it's too much, then that's when we're going to see some damage to the trees. On older, more mature trees, they can handle it. It's actually a form of natural pruning and they'll be fine. Non-woody plants, so tulips or coneflowers, anything like that, they're not going to bother. So if you were planning on putting in a pollinator garden, go right ahead. Just watch out for the trees and shrubs. If you do have to plant them, or you planted them last year, I recommend protecting them with tulle or a kind of bird-safe insect netting. You can find those at pretty much any hardware store, or tulle you can get it at a craft store even. You'll want to wrap that around the trees to make sure to keep the insects away from those outer branches. So in summary, native plants support a huge variety of native wildlife. They can easily replace non-native plants in traditional gardens or even more wild spaces. Not all native plants are appropriate for home landscapes, but there is a native plant for every occasion. So if something is not eating your plants, then your garden is not part of the ecosystem. And that is me with my contact information.
Well, thank you for that. We will get off of screen share. There we go. Thank you for those great information. I will self-profess I was a victim of planting something in my garden in my front yard. I planted milkweed, which is supposed to be really cool, without the supporting plants around it, and it's pretty aggressive.
It is. It is, unfortunately. As I said, the butterfly weed is a better choice for the traditional suburban landscape, only because it grows up a little bit shorter. It's not quite as aggressive, and it still has that great color to it while also helping the monarchs.
Yeah, yep, that's what I wanted to do, and realized that just was not the right place for a front yard, maybe in the backyard, but it's
exactly
it's a learning curve. But for those of us in the area, right across the street from my office is the growing place, and they have a lot of knowledgeable people there if you want to look at plants with regards to that. We have a couple folks in the Facebook. I have my laptop right here for Facebook. Good morning, Bob Dunn and John and Roger Trend and Jim and John Lawson. Thanks for being with us today. A couple questions in the chat. John Lawson said, do natural plants reduce algae in the pond? So when you talked about, I know that ponds around me have natural plantings, and they do a natural burn, and I do believe the Foxfire district is starting to plant natural plants along the banks of the river there. But he wanted to know if natural plants reduce algae in the ponds.
Yeah, they actually can. So one of the things that contributes to those algae blooms are all the fertilizers that we put on our lawns. And so when we mow right down to the shoreline, a lot of times all that grass is being treated with fertilizers, and then it rains. And rain is going to wash all that excess fertilizer into the water, and that's what feeds the algae. So that can contribute to those algae blooms. A little bit of algae is natural and expected in a pond like that, but we have those excessive amounts because the water is getting excessive amounts of nitrogen from these fertilizers. So yes, by having naturalized shorelines, those plants can actually act as a barrier to those fertilizers. You're not fertilizing them, or you shouldn't be fertilizing them in the first place. But then any fertilizers that are washing down from neighboring lawns will sort of get stopped there. And so those plants then will help prevent it from getting, and a lot of other pollutants as well, prevent them from getting into the water in the first place. So yes, they can help prevent those explosions. And then also, because you're not having geese and things like that in the water, they'll sometimes contribute to that nutrient overload as well. So yes, having those kinds of plants can help prevent those algae blooms.
No, that sounds great. And then Jim asked whether they are annuals or perennials.
They are typically perennial. So they have those nice long root systems, which means they're going to come back year after year. What typically makes things an annual is the fact that they can't survive our winters. Native plants, because they're adapted to our conditions here, those roots go down past the frost line. They are able to come back year after year. And so you're not having to replant them all the time.
No, that sounds wonderful. And then, so that's all the questions we have from the viewers. Thanks everybody for viewing today with regards to this presentation. And I know that there is a whole lot more, but you gave out a lot of great websites that we will send to people. And I believe it would be beneficial if we could send out your PowerPoint to individuals who are watching, if you don't mind, so that they can get all the information they can, if possible.
Yeah, I'm not sure the university is going to let us do that, but I can definitely send some info sheets that will have all that great information on there for you.
Oh, wonderful. Nope, that sounds good. And then just to mark on everybody's calendar, May 4th, the state of Illinois designated the first Saturday as Veteran Gardening Day. So we found out that veterans and individuals who, struggling, and I have to say, even people who aren't struggling, to be quite honest, let's just be honest, every veteran, every person should connect with the earth and with the soil. There's just a lot of benefits with working outside and working with plants and planting and pruning, and I have done a garden in the past, and just picking tomatoes and stuff to that effect. So it's always been a really great time. So all veterans, but everybody, I think, should do a little bit of gardening, even if it is a little bit of just pots, because there's a lot you can do with pots too. If you have a limited amount of space, if you happen to live in an apartment or a townhome and you're like, well, I can't have any input on the grass because that's the association, but you can also do some pot gardening. So that's all. So
there, many communities also have community gardens that you can rent a space in, or help volunteering at a program like Master Gardeners.
Oh, you're correct. Right there in Oakhurst has community gardens. The Foxville Park District has a lot of community gardens as well. So very good to be able to check into that. Well, thank you so much for giving us so much information. As we start thinking now, if people are looking at the one last question, then I'll move on to an update for the state of Illinois. People are excited. They're going to buy plants. They're gonna work in their garden. When is the day to plant? Because you don't want to get a last minute frost that can kill them out.
Right.
It's very sensitive on when you're going to plant. These plants will come back every year, but it's very sensitive when you first plant them.
Yes, exactly. And so generally the thought is about May 15th, Mother's Day, somewhere around in there. It tends to be our last frost date here in Northern Illinois. So that's where now is a great time to be planning your garden, deciding what you're going to buy, where you're going to put it, how you're going to take care of it, do the maintenance. So this is a great time to be planning. but I wouldn't put anything in the ground until right about May 15th or so.
No, that sounds great. And planting is important because I've also planted things that got too tall in the front, and so definitely scales, and you said one plant gets, over 20 feet tall. So plants and scaling and planting is so very important. And as you said, the Conservation Foundation has a lot of garden schematics, for lack of a better word, that you can download. They'll tell you all the plants, they'll tell you where to plant them, and what kind of light they need as well. So you can always look to that their
Yeah.
website as well.
And Wild Ones, local chapters of Wild Ones and the Illinois Native Plant Society, they also all have great recommendations and suggestions for planting your natives.
And I know Aurora, Naperville, they have Earth Day celebrations, and Green Fest is in Aurora, and you can always and I've gone to the Naperville Festival indoor expo, I think it was, and I got a free oak tree there. So definitely there's opportunities to get more information in the community. But thank you so much, Jamie, for joining with us on the Zoom. And the questions were great. People really did appreciate all the input that you've given so that they can plant their garden around the Mother's Day area time frame.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much. And you can stay on or you can drop off, but we're going to move right into the state of Illinois. We are scheduled for session Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week. Why is that? That is because tomorrow, Tuesday, is election day. Now, in our area, you won't see a lot of things in the mailboxes, a lot of flyers. It is still an election. You should still get out and vote with regard to whomever you want to vote with. There are primaries in the area. Some are contested, some are not. But it is important to make sure that you're getting out to vote. Now, hundreds of bills have moved out of committee. Last week, Friday, the 15th, was the Senate's deadline to move bills out of committee. Now, what does that mean? That means that you pass it initially out of committee, can come back for an amendment. Our House deadline is April 5th, working on amendments with some bills. So again, as with everything, session is running right along. Just this week alone, we have 38 scheduled committee meetings. That doesn't mean that there might not be more. Sometimes we can schedule additional committee meetings if necessary. But that's where we're looking at now. I hope everybody had a great St. Patty's Day weekend. I was first time ever, I got to go down and see the river dyed green. It's a lot more complicated than you'd think it would be. And the boats drive back and forth, and they put an orange powder in the water. And then other boats come along and they circulate the water by siphoning it up and blowing it out with the hoses. So it really was quite a thing. And then enjoyed the Chicago St. Patrick's Day downtown, both in the downtown area and on the south side. I know that I missed the Aurora St. Patrick's Day parade. They just started it last year. It conflicts with the South Side Parade, but I know that people that went there had a great time as well. So hopefully everybody was responsible and enjoyed their St. Patrick's Day weekend. So what else is going on in the General Assembly? Well, the elected school board is heading to the governor's desk. So it passed out of the Senate, it passed out of the House. What it does is it establishes 20 individual districts. They're nested into 10 districts right now for the Chicago Board of Education. The bill creates 7 majority African-American districts, 6 majority Latino districts, 5 majority white districts, and 2 in which no group has a majority. In 2024, 10 members will be elected, and the mayor will appoint a person to fill the other 10 seats, plus the board chair. In 2026, the appointed seats then will be elected. So we have 20 individual districts. This has been going on for some time, to be quite honest, ever since pretty much I've been in the General Assembly. Everywhere else in the state has an elected school board. Chicago did have an elected school board, and then the General Assembly removed that authority from the voters and gave that to the mayor back in the 1990s. Now, so what we are doing is really just reverting the Chicago Public School Board back to its original form, which was elected with the individuals in those districts being able to vote, just like we do out here, being able to vote with regards to the members of the board. Simple as that. What we're also looking at is COGFA. I've mentioned COGFA many times before, and that is our that's our analytics. That's our people. That's who come and do a lot of analyzing. So the Commission on Government Forecasting and Accountability reported a discussion of our economic recovery and some economic indicators. So what we are seeing is that really the soft landing, if you want to talk about it, the economy, the recession fears are subsiding. So we're pretty firm and it has some steady growth. We looked at some of the revenues that are like gaming revenues. In 2023, gaming revenues grew from 1.4 billion to 1.5 billion. And so that's another increase. And then our other revenues, tax revenues are pretty much stagnant and growing a bit. And really what we're looking at, and we got a budget update from the Department of Revenue. And for the full update, I can certainly give that to individuals. But we're looking at some of our tax revenues go up, some of our tax revenues go down. We talk about the big three in tax revenues: income tax, corporate taxes, corporate income tax, and sales tax. So, but keep that in mind, that's not grocery tax, that's sales tax on goods, other goods, not services. Other states tax services, Illinois does not. So we're looking at the breakdown as we go through the budget process to see what the governor's proposing and what he wants to spend it on. And that's what the most of our work is going on right now. One of the things, speaking of finances, we have a college savings plan. Now, if you have a small child and you can start right now investing in their college savings plan, it's a 529 college savings plan. And the Bright Start plan is Illinois has been named the nation's best 529 college savings plan for 2024 by Business Insider. So this is governed by Illinois State Treasurer Michael Frericks, and his office, and he recognizes that the office work on the Bright Star has gone from one of the nation's worst college saving plans before he took office to now one of the best. And it never hurts to save for college. For those that want to go to college, my son's in the Navy. He's doing a great job with that as well. But Bright Star has a counterpart, Bright Directions, and that's a college savings plan an individual can open through a financial advisor. So both are 529 tax advantage plans. The funds saved through both programs can be used at thousands of colleges, university, trade schools, and technical schools. So the number of accounts and money invested in them has more than doubled since Treasurer Frericks took office in 2015. So there are 880,000 accounts with $18 billion in assets. That is up from 375 accounts with $7 billion in assets. So since 2015, family used these accounts to pay for $5 billion in college expenses. So really, that's a great, just a great thing. That is helping everyday families and individuals go to college and help out. Now, if you want to know what to do, DCEO Office of Tourism has some new outdoor videos. So these new outdoor videos feature stories from Illinois adventurers spotlighting the extensive range of outdoor recreation and activities available throughout the state. So if you might not know, but Illinois has 70 areas. 2,900 lakes and 7 national scenic byways. So really, there's no excuse. There's no shortage of things to do outside. So the videos are titled Real People, Real Stories, Real Outdoors, and they capture genuine experiences of Illinois residents and the beauty of outdoor. Now, other things that are going on, um, like I said, the recession, we're looking at the recession is subsiding. And like I said, we're strong, close to the final 3.5 months of the fiscal year. So what we're looking at and what we're seeing is some concerns. Now, we always have some concerns from COGFA with regards to revenues, but nationwide, I don't think we're going to have a recession like everybody talked about. And I think things are going really good. We also are looking at the state's health insurance industry. Now, if you recall, if you looked at the state of the state / budget address, Governor Pritzker talked about healthcare. So Governor Pritzker appointed the state-based health marketplace director, Morgan Winters. Congratulations. She will serve as director of the soon-to-be created state-based health insurance marketplace. And so beginning with plan year 2026, the state will convert to a state platform and move away from the healthcare.gov. But he's also looking at other healthcare issues in which he was addressing in his state of the state / budget address in February, which would limit the ability of companies to deny claims or steer patients towards cheaper, possibly less effective treatments. And this is in a bill that we have in the House, House Bill 5395. So one of the things that I've heard repeatedly from individuals is that they are forced to do physical therapy before they can get the medical treatment or the operation that they need. So with regards to this, we have a bill that will ban prior authorization requirements for people to receive inpatient treatment at a psychiatric facility, as well as the so-called step therapy for prescription drug coverage and therapy when it comes to, as I said, making patients go to cheaper, less effective therapy. Honestly, it makes no sense to me for somebody who has to go through these therapies and then get the operation or get the treatment they need. It seems like a lot of wasted money. And furthermore, the governor's working on with regards to House Bill 5395, requiring insurance companies to publicly post the types of treatments and therapies to that do need prior authorization, requiring them to maintain accurate lists of providers who are in their networks, and banning the sale of Illinois of short-term, limited duration insurance plans that don't meet the minimum standards under the Federal Affordable Care Act. Now, ghost networks is one of the things that is mentioned when requiring them to maintain accurate list of providers who are on their networks. I've heard this a lot of times as well. Individuals are calling insurance providers that claim they have their doctors or that they have some doctors, and they can't find a doctor because the doctors aren't accepting new patients. They don't work with that insurance plan. The list is out of date. So there's been a lot of hearings and wonderful input from patients and their families, including some legislators who spoke out about experience of having claims denied by their insurers. And one of those individuals, our very own State Senator Patrick Joyce, whose son was born with a rare heart malfunction that requires treatments for which he needs prior authorization. He also had a daughter who died following a long battle with leukemia. So we really do appreciate just everybody reaching out, and Senator Patrick Joyce for sharing their stories. I know that sometimes we're in this position as elected officials, and individuals tend to forget that we have life experiences that we bring to the table. And Senator Patrick Joyce is just a wonderful individual that brought his stories to the committee. The chair is Anna Moeller and Elgin, and the committee will have more discussions as they go on and look at the crux of that situation with regards to healthcare. You think you have healthcare, but you can't find a doctor. That doesn't mean you have healthcare. So we're working on that. Also, the state of Illinois is moving to join 10 other states to limit toxic forever chemicals. You might have heard about these in underground sources of water. So, Illinois did just announce regulations Wednesday by the Illinois Pollution Control Board, and they are intended to protect millions of people from per and polyfluoral substances, or PFAS, some of which build up in the human blood, can cause cancer and other diseases, and take years to get out of your body. They're in the water, they're in the drinking water. And so it's really unknown. Of the 1.4 million people in the state who depend on private wells are drinking PFAS contaminated water. Last year, officials had decided it was up to individual well owners to have their water tested. So this new initiative all comes from, again, the federal government. The president's Joe Biden's administration is proposing the first ever national drinking water standards of two of the most widely studied PFAS. And I'm not going to be able to read these words properly. Perfluoroocane sulfonic acid, PFOS, is used by 3M for decades to make Scotch Guard stain repellent, and perfluoroocanic acid, PFOA, which 3M sold to DuPont to manufacture Teflon coatings for cookware, clothing, and wiring. So if adopted, utilities will be required to limit concentration of the two forever chemicals in drinking water to 4 parts per trillion. An amount the US EPA determined is the lowest at which PFOS and PFOA can be accurately detected. So definitely there are costs with regards to this, and there are other states that limit PFAS, includes Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, Maryland, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Wisconsin. So we have other states that we can look to for information with regards to this legislation. So in the legislature, we think of all these ideas with regards to legislation. Sometimes we do, but other times we look to other states, what other states have done, and really work together. We have organizations, the NCSL and National Council of State Legislators, and we get together once a year, sometimes twice a year, and talk to our fellow members of other general assemblies and listen to what they're doing. And we work on that as well. So what else we are doing? Again, March 21st, the Illinois Supreme Court will convene at Northern Illinois University as part of its Ride the Circuits program. So look into that and see if you can sit down and actually view the Illinois Supreme Court in action. And then just so that in case you're interested, there was an opinion that was issued, unanimous opinion last week, holding a youth hockey club that leases and operates a portion of a public ice arena is subject to the Human Rights Act and can be held liable for violation of the Act's remedial provisions. In this case, the parents of a freshman hockey player advised the coach the student had mental health issues, but was approved to play. Following the conversation, the student was barred from activities specifically because of her mental health issues. The parents, on behalf of the student, sued as a violation of the Human Rights Act. The student was more than adequate, more than capable of playing. There's no reason for that to have happened. Again, we have had individuals from the Human Rights Act on to talk about all that they can do as well. Finally, we are looking at the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity announces $3 million in available grant funding through the Innovation Voucher Program. So innovative vouchers will provide grants for companies to engage in research projects in partnerships with a qualified Illinois institution of higher education, ultimately leading to the commercialization of new Illinois-based products and stimulating economic growth in the state. So definitely there is, if you know somebody that wants to really be innovative, there are grants from the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. There's also grants from Mike Frerich's office, the treasurer. We talked about him a little bit earlier. for small nonprofit charitable trust grants. So small nonprofit organizations that provide people with food or housing assistance are encouraged to apply for funding through the Charitable Trust Stabilization Program. So this program assists small nonprofits with an annual budget of 1 million or less, and with the equivalent of one full-time employee, grant applications in an area where pervasive poverty, unemployment, and economic distress exists will be given special attention. The maximum award is about 20,000 for each organization, and an independent 11-member committee oversees the management and guidelines of the fund and will select grant recipients. So the money comes from filing fees that nonprofits pay when incorporating to the state of Illinois, not from personal or property tax dollars. So it was established in 2017. Nearly 4.3 million has been awarded to 183 nonprofits through this fund. So there is grants available. The Illinois Board of Higher Education has awarded nursing school grants to 12 institutions of higher ed across the state. So if you're going to get into nursing, potentially your school probably could have gotten one of these grants. And this is to help increase the number of registered professional nurses with high quality post-secondary credentials to meet the demands of the workforce. So this line item was in the governor's budget last year, and it is just now being awarded. So there's a lot to go out in the state of Illinois and a lot going on with the state as well. Again, we are moving bills out of committee. They're getting to the floor. I had a couple veteran bills on the floor to present. We had wonderful lobby days last week. The VFWs, American Legions, and AMVETS lobbied. We also had the chiefs of fire, the fire protection chiefs in Springfield lobbying as well. And it's always great to see individuals from our hometown. I actually met one of the fire chiefs, lives in my neighborhood, works in a different town. But it's always wonderful to meet individuals in Springfield. If you're coming to Springfield, please let us know ahead of time, and we'll definitely make arrangements to meet up. So with that, today, Monday, March 18th, is National Supreme Sacrifice Day. That means to me, I'm probably going to, take the day and honor those that sacrificed their lives for a good cause, no matter how small that cause might have been. So not many or not all of the monuments built in their names, but this day serves as a continuous reminder or metaphorical monument erected in their name. Any group or person can be celebrated on this day, whether they are living or dead. So you sit there and you say, well, that doesn't make sense. National Sacrifice Day, but living or dead. Most of the time we talk about, for me in the veteran community, sacrifices, Gold Star families and those that serve. But it is, and it does take away from people's lives and sometimes their livelihood for individuals who sacrifice a day for the good of other people, positive contributions to society, good deeds. They don't need, in my opinion, to be recognized by a formal organization to be celebrated on this holiday. But just think of individuals that sacrifice their time, their energy, their money, their efforts to help out and to be there in our community. Like in the chat, the VFW Day of Service is days of service. You are giving up a day's pay to help with an organization or helping out in any way, shape, or form. So that's what today is. Jim wanted to know if this video can be viewed later. Yes, Facebook Live is on. It's on the Facebook. So definitely that's why we're here. So you can share this if other people want to start looking at their plants and planting their gardens. So at the end of the day, we're talking about the environment. The Illinois Department of Transportation released a notice of funding opportunity for round one of the Illinois National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. This is providing up to $50 million for construction of 46 charging stations across the state. So Illinois is leading the way with regards to protecting our environment and making sure that we are doing all that we can with regards to our environment. You can help out by planting natural plants. Make sure you plant them in the right spots. Don't be like me that planted them in the wrong spots, but definitely seek the advice of those that are well versed in plantings and recycling and all that. And then finally, I know a lot of people have been waiting for this, and spring trout season opens April 6th at 58 locations statewide. So Saturday, April 6th at 58 ponds, lakes, and streams throughout the state, the spring trout fishing season will begin. So the Illinois Department of Natural Resources stocks more than 80,000 rainbow trout each year in bodies of water where trout fishing is permitted during the spring season. An additional 80,000 trout will be stocked for the fall trout season, which begins in October. So during regular season, the daily harvest limit for each angler is 5 trout. So this is just an opportunity for families to get outdoors, enjoy fishing, and again, get in touch with nature. Don't forget, you need to get a fishing license and trout stamps, and they can be purchased at ifishillinois.org. Where in our areas can you go trout fishing? In DuPage County, we have Grove Lake. That's the DuPage County Forest Preserve District. Pickerel Lake and Silver Lake, all DuPage County Forest Preserve District. In Kendall County, Big Lake, Silver Spring State Fish and Wildlife Area. And in Will County, Lake Milken. It's the Des Plaines State Fish and Wildlife Area. So that's where you can go trout fishing. And then save the date for Saturday, July 13th. A lot of people are interested in this. Recycle and Shred Day. We do electronic recycling. We do medication take back recycling. We shred limit 4 bags for cars. And we do recycle cell phones, eyeglasses, and used books. And it is countless. You just drive up. It is right outside my office, 1677 Montgomery Road. And then finally, solar eclipse glasses, again, I'm going to say it, are still available in the office. So swing by normal business hours from today through April 7th. And do not forget to vote tomorrow. Tomorrow, March 19th, is primary election day. You can go to your county's website or call your county election clerk. But definitely, this is the primary. I did get a question. Yes, individuals that are 17 today will be 18 over the summer or before the general election are allowed to participate in the primary because they will be voting in the November election. And we just think it's the right thing to do to let them have their say in who they would like to vote for in the general election in November. So with that, have a fabulous Monday. Again, we are in session Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week. And we are in next week as well. And I will give you an update from this week's session as we head into deadline week, which is next week in the House, already passed in the Senate to get the bills out of committee. So take care, have a great day, have a great week, and be safe. COVID's still out there, and hand sanitize, keep your distance. And if you're still celebrating St. Patty's Day this week, celebrate responsibly and have a great day.